Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Catizo, United Church of Christ. We had a meeting with some of your friends not long ago, and we were going through some beginning ideas about, what forgiveness is about. And everybody in the group said, yeah, that's really a nice idea, and I understand it. One gentleman said, why should I forgive somebody who cut my leg off? Basically what he said, I know this guy who got his legs cut off. Why should he forgive? And I thought that was a really good question. And so I'm going to attempt to answer the question today. First slide. Okay, first of all, the answer is you don't have to. If you got your legs cut off, you have a perfect right to suffer. You have a perfect right to be depressed, to be angry, to be bitter for the rest of your life. Okay, but there's some things that you should think about. Some say that all we really have in life is time. And if you're spending your life being bitter, having events that happened a long time ago, controlling how you feel today, maybe there's a better way to live. Maybe we can not forget the past, but use that information to move forth into a happy future. And you got to ask, what's the goal? Okay, if you're angry, bitter, and resentful, what are we hoping to accomplish from that? People have kind of a natural kind of instinct or tendency to think that if I'm bitter and angry, the person who hurt me is going to be punished. It might result in some change in their behavior. Truth is, that's not going to happen. You can be as bitter and angry and resentful as you want. It's not going to change the person who hurt you one little bit. Okay, so what's the purpose of that behavior? What's it going to get us? Okay, now, what I want to convey to you today is that we do have a choice. We can live, be happy. We don't want to forget the past. We don't want to let anybody, what we call off the hook with regard to responsibility. But we do want to move on so that each of you can live a happy life. Next slide. Okay, let's talk about what do we mean by forgiveness. I looked it up in the dictionary. To give up anger and resentment. To give it up. Like I said, there's no real purpose to it other than we're unhappy. Okay, to stop blaming. Okay? That person cut my legs off. Therefore, I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. Okay? When you make a statement to yourself like that, you're giving that person who hurt you the power to control your entire future. Okay, yeah, it's terrible. And your life's going to be difficult. But you don't have to be condemned to be bitter for the rest of your life. We can move on. The last one, to grant relief from a debt. Now it sounds like that's kind of a money thing, but it's really an important idea. Because when we forgive, what we want to do is just close the book on what happened a long time ago. Okay? Our unhappiness isn't going to change anything that happened in the past. Okay, so let's learn from it, let's use it, let's move on. Let's just put it aside. When you forgive somebody from a debt, you're not expecting anything from them anymore. We move on. Next slide. Okay, why is it good? Okay, forgiveness is more than just a really nice idea, religions. Okay? It's a specific psychological procedure that, if done right, studies show it will reduce your blood pressure, it will reduce your blood sugar, it'll make your physical health much better. Those that don't walk around with resentment live a healthier life in terms of your physical body, and you live longer. It's good for your mind. Those that forgive have less anxiety, they have less depression, they have less post-traumatic stress. And it's good for your soul. You know, Jesus taught us we should forgive. To err is human. To forgive is divine. So we want to be divine. We want to rise above the terrible things that have happened. Next slide. Okay. This is the part where we break up into small groups and we talk about the violence that has been done to us, the hurt that has been done to you. The purpose of that is to bring those feelings to the surface. Survivors of genocide and of violence naturally are very good at closing themselves off to their feelings. We want to bring some of those feelings up so we're prepared to forgive. So we have an idea of the importance of why it is to forgive. Okay? And it's also good to share your story with another trusted person. So for today, since we don't have a lot of time, we're just going to move on and talk about some feelings that logically would happen. Next slide. Normally, and with all good reason and the right to do so, people are angry, they're resentful, they're frustrated, they're depressed, they may even feel hopeless. Okay, next slide. Okay, what is forgiveness? Here's another definition, a little different than a dictionary definition. Okay, it's the peace and understanding that comes from blaming that which has hurt you less. Okay, now this is different from responsibility. The person that cut your legs off is entirely responsible. Okay, but you got to remember too that even though their behavior is terrible, they're also a victim of circumstance. They're set up to behave the way that they did. Cutting somebody's legs off, murdering, genocide is not normal behavior. It's behavior that occurs, but it is predictable behavior. It's behavior that will occur under certain circumstances. Any one of us, Pastor Ted, anyone in this room, given the right conditions, will commit violence. So we have to think, we have to put ourselves in the mind of the perpetrators of violence. They see themselves as victims. They see themselves as the ones that are abused. They see themselves as the ones that are deserving of revenge. Okay, forgiveness is letting go of your sad story. It's not forgetting, but just put it aside. Okay, like I said, worrying about it, living your life in an unhappy way is just not necessary. You have a choice. Okay, and the idea is to tell a story. We all have a story that we tell ourselves about who we are, who others are, who's right, who's wrong, who's good, who's bad. And usually we're at the center of that story. You're the star of your own film, so to speak. So when you tell your story, we want to begin telling a story of not somebody that's been harmed that can never be repaired, and begin telling a story of a hero that has survived. And we'll take that knowledge and move forth in the future with the power that that knowledge brings them. Next. So forgiveness is the key to freedom. Put it aside, let it go. Now, wait a minute. I'm not talking about letting anybody off with regard to responsibility. Next slide. Forgiveness is not reconciliation. We're not asking you to become buddy-buddy with the person that committed violence to you or to live with them. it's nice. I mean, forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. Forgiveness is just letting it go. Reconciliation is coming to a place where we can live together. So we want to get to reconciliation, but it's not necessary to forgive. Okay? It's not condoning. It's not saying, oh, well, that was okay, or we're going to let you off from the consequences that are appropriate given your crime. Okay? You have to pay your debt, even if I've forgiven you. It's not injustice. The people that commit violence still need to go through the legal process and pay their debt. And it's not weakness. Okay? It's not letting them get the best of you. Okay? It's a way of getting back your power. When we forgive, when we put aside the resentment, we regain control of our lives, and we build a path to leading a healthy, happy life. And I hope you believe that it is possible, even for victims of genocide, to move on through forgiveness and live a happy, a genuinely happy life. Next slide. So, forgiveness is about you, not for anybody else. We're not letting anybody off the hook. You're doing something to take care of yourself. And that is something for victims of violence that is badly needed and much deserved. So let's give yourself a chance. Next slide. After all, and really, I mean, we talk about how, you know, no matter how angry and resentful you are, it's not going to change anything in terms of that perpetrator's behavior. It brings us to an idea that really what you can control is yourself. Okay? And the best way to get revenge, if you really want to, and of course that's you have perfect right to revenge. The best way you can really get them back is to live a happy life, regardless of what they did to you. Next slide. I talked about this just a second ago. Everybody needs forgiveness. Even perpetrators of violence need forgiveness. Like I said, they don't see themselves as the bad guy. They need to forgive whatever circumstances or whatever it was that put them up to do what terrible things that they did. We have a specific procedure that we do where you get the victim together with the perpetrator of violence. The victim tells about what happened to them, and they offer forgiveness. The perpetrator of violence tells about, basically they admit to what they did. Then they ask for forgiveness. You know, that's really hard to work out. It's really hard to get perpetrators of violence to sit down and admit to their behavior and to request forgiveness, because in their mind, they were right. They're going to find justice. It's almost as if the worse the behavior, the worse the act is, the more psychologically they will come up with stories that justify their behavior. Okay? So it's difficult. This whole process of reconciliation through forgiveness, it's going to take some time. And it's going to take a lot of courage. Next slide. Like I said, anybody under the right conditions is going to become violent. Okay, I've been studying the research on war and genocide and violent behavior and peace. And you take a population of people. It could be Hutus and Tutsis, or it could be Michigan fans and Ohio State fans. Okay? If you take these people, these two different groups. By the way, college football is basically tribal behavior. We get rallied around our home group. Okay? If we take the government and they start publicizing hate propaganda. I've studied the, is anybody familiar with the Hutu 10 Commandments? Is that familiar to anybody? It was some propaganda that was put forth on a radio station through the government. Basically what it is, it's brainwashing. You know, those people that committed those violent acts were the victims of brainwashing. These are good people that were taught to do terrible things. Okay, so you take the hate propaganda. Let's say there's economic stress. You can't get your needs met. You don't have a place to live. You don't have a job. You don't have the basic things you need to survive, which was the case in Rwanda in 1994 and in other places around Central Africa. Okay? And then add to that political instability. All of a sudden, you don't know what's what. Your whole system of what to expect, and your whole system of understanding society collapses underneath you. Well, in those circumstances, you're going to rally around your home group. And the more the stress, the more smaller the groups they become, the more fanatical they become. And that hate propaganda starts working on your mind. Okay? Add to that a threat. If I truly believe that other group has the power to kill me or my family, you give them the tools to do it, you got a recipe for genocide. In a way, it can be considered normal human behavior. It's happened throughout history, and it will happen again. Through studying war and peace and conflict, I've come to the conclusion that people love war. We dramatize it. We in our culture do it all the time. The only people that don't love war are the people that have been affected by war. I think it was General Patton that said, compared to all the accomplishments of man, war is the greatest. It is the supreme, most profound thing that humans do. Next slide. Now, let's see if we can understand it a little bit from a biological perspective. I'm a brain psychologist, so I like to know what's happening in the brain when behavior occurs, like committing violent acts. Okay? We all have kind of a human brain on the outside, and we have an animal brain way on the inside. And evolution has kind of taught us to be, and give us brain structures that allow us to be able to behave appropriately and to cooperate with each other so we can all get along. Okay? But under threat, the old instinctive brain wakes up. And that's what you call the fight-flight reaction. What's going on is the thinking brain shuts off. The animal brain takes over. And instead of thinking and then acting, we're just reacting. And then there's testosterone. Who are the committers of violence? It's young men. Young men that are pumped with testosterone. In Rwanda in 1994 and maybe other places, they don't have anything better to do. They have no job. The best job they can get is to join the military, get a gun, and to do what the leader tells you to do. That's the best way you can get along. Okay? So, the body is prepared to emit violence. And they're genetic drives. Let's say you're a caveman and you're walking along and you hear some rustling behind a bush. You gotta make some judgments about that sound. Is it safe, or could that be a threat? Okay. Now, if we assume, given no other information, that it's a threat, then we're more likely to survive, and more likely to pass our genes down to the next generation. Okay? So basically, we are biologically prepared to be far more defensive than it's really reasonable or rational to be. You might think of it, you know, the saying, only the strong survive, but really it's only the defensive that survive, the paranoid survive. The people are quick to assume threat. It's biologically woven into our wiring. Next. Now here's the hard part. Anybody here get angry now and then? Irritable? Okay. Well, when somebody makes us angry, the last thing we want to hear from somebody else is, you need to calm down. That person will say, you know, don't tell me what to do. I know what I'm doing. Blah, 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 blah. And they just go on their automatic defensive behavior. Okay? So when we become tense, when we've been offended, when we perceive a threat, okay, it's very difficult to be able to recognize in yourself, uh-oh, I'm not using my brain's best capacity to assess the situation and to do the right thing to solve the problem. So we got to become practiced at knowing when you're getting upset. That's hard to do. And when we do get upset, you call a timeout. I do this. And what I do is I'll say, excuse me, I need to use the restroom. Go into the restroom and I do a little exercise. Okay? It starts with breathing. We breathe in through our nose so that the belly fills up. And then out through the mouth. You tense all the muscles in the upper body. Tense, tense, tense as much as you can. And then let it go. And then tense all the muscles in your lower body. Tense, 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 tense as you can, and then let it go. Now the muscles are relaxed. An anxious mind cannot exist in a relaxed body. Now that the body is relaxed, we go to a place of contentment. Everybody has a time or a place in your life that is a safe place, a happy place, a place of contentment. You can go there in your mind. For me, it might be a mountaintop in Colorado at a mountain lake. Okay, for you, who knows, it might be with your family or it might be any place. But you go there in your mind. And now the mind is relaxed. And then once the body and the mind is relaxed, then we say, I'm going to choose to forgive. I'm going to let it go. Next slide. We got to get to the here and now. So this is very important. Those that suffer from anger and depression and resentment today over what happened 20 years ago, like I said before, may not be using their time on this earth as well as they possibly could. Okay? We're letting those old tapes, those old movies run in our head. And every time we run that movie through our head about the violence that was done to us, we become more angry. We're just waking up those brain pathways. We're keeping that hurt alive. So stop doing that. You know, as I was saying, you know, in Central Africa, they're always doing these memorials. Okay? Now, the memorials are good. You don't want to forget, okay? But you want to do it right. If you do a memorial, sometimes it just keeps old hurt feelings and angry feelings alive. So you have to have the memorial within the context of forgiveness. Okay? Very important. Keep in mind what you can control versus what you can't. People get confused about this all the time, and I'll get straight to the message. The only thing that you can really control is yourself. We really don't have much control. Yeah, now and then we have some influence over other people. But generally, as I said, all those hurt feelings and all that pain you live with is going to do anybody any good, and it's not going to change anybody else. So give it up. can't control the past. No matter how angry and resentful you feel, no matter how anxious you are, it's not going to make what happened change. It's not going to change the past. And I say, let go for dear life. Let go. Your life is too important. You've survived. You have come through events and experiences which most humans don't have to live through. Okay? That gives you power. You have the knowledge of the value and the gift of life. You, above all people, should know the importance of living each day and be as happy as you can, regardless of what happened 20 years ago. Next slide. Don't should on other people. Okay? These are what we call unenforceable rules. We all have them. Okay? What happened the other day? I was at home, my wife brought home some chicken, and I was hungry. And I just went and got a piece of chicken, and she got upset because she wanted to wait to set the table. And then I got upset because I should be able to do whatever I want because I'm hungry. Okay? We all have shoulds or rules that people should behave appropriately. They should not be violent. They should go to church. But again, we don't have much control over other people. Okay? You may say things like, I should not have been injured. My family shouldn't have been killed. I should be recognized for my pain and compensated for what happened to me. Okay? Now, that's probably correct. And you have a right to think that way. But if that rule is unenforceable, if you can't really change human nature, and if you can't change the past, then those rules, which you insist upon, are just keeping you in a place of hurt. So just remember, all we can really control is ourselves. We live the best way we can each day, and hopefully that will become infectious and other people will come along. Okay? So just do it for you. Next slide. So, as I said, is wrapping it up. All we have in life is time. Let it go. Make a commitment to use your experience to fully savor the gift of life and make a commitment to living each day not controlled by what happened to you in the past. And a good therapeutic thing to do is to do exactly what Innocent is doing, and that is to go to battle. It's not a battle for war, it's not a battle of hurt, it's a battle of peace. You know? Dedicate your life to teaching forgiveness, to telling your story of forgiveness, to spreading the word that there is a new generation that's coming along, and we won't tolerate unhappiness anymore. Okay?